Alright, so we're checking out the LIPULS mini 12.8 volt 100 amp hour battery in this video. This is a lithium iron phosphate battery, and it's a little hard to see on the screen here, but this is very small. Your typical Group 31 100 amp hour battery, like the one that I tested in the last video on the Golden Mate 100 amp hour battery, is significantly larger than this one. This was even smaller than the Group 24 size batteries, which is, I think, the smallest in the 100 amp hour category. So these mini batteries are, I think, fairly recently new. I don't think they have a group number, but in terms of the dimensions, it's about 9 inches wide, 8.35 inches tall, and only 5.4 inches deep. And here's a little spec sheet that came with the battery, and you can see here the dimensions and also the weight. It only weighs 20.9 pounds. So the Group 31 batteries should typically run 30 pounds. So this is about 33%, about 30% lighter and significantly smaller. So if you for example, want to build like a power bank, for example, like one of those power walls for solar home energy storage, you can group these in a 4x4 setup or 4S4 piece setup, 16 batteries total, and get up to almost 21 kilowatt hours in this size. And it'll take up very little space compared to a Group 31 size battery. So if you're in an environment where you're space limited, this is a battery you definitely want to consider. So in addition to the spec sheet, we'll cover this here shortly. You do get a full product manual as well, and then you get the terminal covers that are on these terminals here, and these are pretty nice. These terminals are raised up, and then you get 2 sets of bolts. So you get a longer set of bolts here, and then you get a shorter set of bolts. So if you have a lot of conductors that you're going to be tying to the battery, these longer bolts are going to be pretty useful, and it's kind of nice to see because most of the time they don't come with the 2 different sizes, just usually come with these shorter bolts. Alright, so just going to quickly cover all the basic specs. 100 amp hour battery, just say that it's 1280 watt hours, that's standard. The cells inside here are prismatic, that's also pretty standard for lithium iron phosphate. Recommended charge current 20 amps, although I did charge mine at 35 amps. I'll talk about that here in a second. Now maximum charge current is up to 100 amps. So the BMS on here is 100 amp BMS. It can handle up to a 100 amp maximum charge, as well as a 100 amp continuous maximum discharge. Now it's saying there is a peak charge current of 200 amps up to 3 seconds. Now that's pretty conservative. I did see some other videos where this thing can get pushed, the BMS can get pushed to 200, even 300 amps, and that's probably not recommended. It's the BMS has probably some temperature sensors in here, and it'll detect when the temperature is too high and the load is too much, and then it'll shut off the battery. And if you have a situation where the overcurrent protection kicks in on this battery, the voltage on the battery will go down to like 3 volts, I believe, which is basically it just disconnects the BMS from the cells inside. And in order to wake this battery up, you have to put it on a charger for like 10 seconds, I believe, and then it'll wake it back up. So in case you run into that problem. But yeah, the BMS on here is extremely robust. So yeah, just have a cutoff current of 300 amps. It's at 31 milliseconds, but I've seen videos where it goes quite a bit longer than that, up to I think 10 seconds. I think I saw somewhere. The discharge cutoff voltage is under 10 volts. I believe it's like it can go as low as 9, but I think the rated spec is about 10 volts. And of course, it does have your short circuit protection, your standard protections like overcurrent, over discharge, over voltage, etc. Those are all built in here. Now, the one protection I did not see in the manual anywhere is low temperature charge protection. So Typically on most of these batteries, when the temperature gets below freezing, you'd want it to be completely cut off. And it can go below freezing if you're not using it, but if you're discharging or charging it, you can damage the battery. And this battery does not have low temperature protection. So if you're in a cold environment, like say, if it's going to be stored outdoors where it could be under 32 degrees Fahrenheit, this battery doesn't have those protections, so you will damage the battery if you try to charge it in those super cold temperatures. So be aware of that. And if you're in an environment where it is very cold like that, I would not recommend getting this battery because it does not have those protections. So of course, typical life cycles, 4,000 cycles here at 100% depth of discharge. I think it's 15,000 cycles at 60% depth of discharge. 5-year warranty on this one here, pretty standard stuff overall. Now, when I first got the battery, it was at a storage charge of 13.22 volts, which is standard for this one. You want your battery stored not at full charge, and so that's usually where they come out, like around 13.1, 13.2 volts. That's good to see. And I did charge up the battery to full on my 35 amp charger. They do recommend charging it at 20 amps, but you can go up to 100 amps, as I mentioned earlier. My charger, 35 amps, is not atypical, but I would recommend if you want to maintain the longevity of the battery, charge it at 20 amps instead of 35 amps. But of course, going at a higher current rate, you're going to be able to charge it faster. So doing my standard 100% to 0% capacity test on my capacity meter, I actually extracted out 1,334 watt hours at about, I think it was around 95 watts draw total. I think it was around 14 and a half hours for the test. So very good results. In fact, better than a lot of the other Group 31 batteries, the much larger batteries that I've tested in the past. So very surprising result. I think that's 105 amp hours total. So very, obviously rated for more than what it's advertised. So on my maximum discharge test, I did hook this up to a 1,000 watt inverter. I hooked it up to a vacuum cleaner and a heat gun. And, I wanted to see, this is the most that I could hook it up to. I don't have anything larger. So I was able to get it up to about 117 amps, 118 amps maximum discharge for a pretty long period of time. Obviously, it's rated for 100 amps continuous, and it could probably do 118 amps probably for a fairly long period of time, probably for the whole capacity of the battery, although it's definitely not recommended or good for the battery. But in terms of being able to handle that amount of wattage, I would think it was around 1,300 watts, I believe, close to 1,300 watts. No problem this one. And for something like this, a 12 volt 100 amp hour battery, that's about the most I would ever recommend in terms of the load you're going to put on the battery. If you're within that range, that's you probably don't want to go much over that. It's not really good for the battery over the long haul, but this particular battery is able to handle it no problem. So at the end of the day, the LIPULS mini 100 amp hour battery passed all my tests with flying colors. Definitely satisfied with the results. And yeah, if you're looking for a smaller battery, lighter battery, maybe you need something like this in a smaller space, or you want to have it to be a little more portable. Not, obviously 21 pounds is going to be a lot more portable than 30 pounds. This is definitely one to check out, especially if you're going to be using it in a smaller space. You have space considerations or weight considerations. This is definitely one to consider over the larger Group 31 size batteries, which are much larger and weighs quite a bit more. The big downside, of course, is the low temperature protection in this one. Not recommended for cold environments because it will allow you to charge your battery and kill the battery if it goes below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Because those protections are not a part of the feature set of this battery, so you just need to be aware of that. But otherwise, if you're not in that situation, this battery will work out perfectly fine for you, and I definitely would recommend it if you need something of this size and weight. Anyway, I'm going to put a link down in the video description if you guys want to check out this battery. That'll do it for this video, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.